Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Death by Pony. Today we're hopping back into our life. So without further ado, let's hop in. The friend gave a thumbs up and scampered off to where the singer had left. Baxter inspected the flowers held in your hand. He approved of the bouquet. It would make for a nice gift, circumstances aside. A familiar smirk appeared on his lips. He delightedly stroked a petal with the back of his knuckles. His voice was low in your ear.
You know,
This is unlikely to work, but I do admire the friend's effort. Whispered your agreement, you laughed. You forced yourself not to laugh. Oh shush, he snickered. Just seriously, insisted. You frowned at him. Yeah, it was an admittedly silly plan, but there was no way that the singer would abandon her convictions for a few flowers. Maybe she'd surprise you, but even then, there was no contingency for the bartender. However, I do look forward to the result. I'm expecting a great deal of entertainment. The door to the singer's dressing room swung open, and the friend pulled the singer back into the main room. The arms were locked together, but the singer was dragging her very tall high heels all the way. In one manicured hand was a tiny bottle, no doubt the aforementioned emergency alcohol. It was already half gone. It's not good to stay holed up by yourself all the time. You don't need to hide from everybody. I'm not hiding, I'm simply very busy. Since they weren't a fool like the parents, the friends didn't buy that at all. Once the friend reached the center of the room, they released the singer. She rolled her shoulders back, still affronted by the rough treatment. Showtime. Flower delivery. You bellowed loudly enough that the people seated across the room could hear you. I have something for you. The singer snapped her head towards the bar and had her focus down on you. Her dress swished as she approached. You held up the bouquet. Her suspicious acknowledgement gave you pause. Where did these come from? The bartender left them for you. Me. They're from me to you. The bartender left them for you. Miss Starlet gasped and pressed both hands to her chest. She squinted hard at the flowers as if it was a nest of snakes. She unscrewed the cap of her small bottle and tipped it between her first lips. She chugged the remainder of the liquid down. That got a huge laugh from the audience. She slammed her empty bottle down on the bar counter and gasped for air with frightened eye. But gently and slowly, ever so slowly, she reached out. Her fingertips touched in a single flower stem. She paused, then finished her movement and wrapped her digit around it. Okay, can we take a second, if you will? Just look at how pretty this flower is. Again, unfortunately, art major. I like to stop and look at the details. But it has very nice shading. The detail of the veins in the back of the leaf are fantastic, and the attention to detail in the individual petals is also very... How do I say this? Well, I guess well executed would be a good way to put it. You stayed immobilized as she were a butterfly, and any movement would send her fluttering off. Without warning, there came a shout from the other end of the bar. Got your drink right here. Every head turned to see the bartender making his reappearance, a tray of drinks balanced on his right arm. Sorry for the wait, just had to... He froze mid-sentence, staring at the scene. He'd returned to witness the singer standing next to you, being offered a bouquet, a single flower clutched in her hand. It was deathly quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the band had stopped playing until... Suddenly, the singer let out a mortified shriek. She flung the proffered flower and bottle, beating the frantic, desperate escape. She careened around the corner and then... slam. The deafening sound of a door being slammed shut. Another awful silence formed. Having remained frozen where the singer fled, the bartender attention returned to where you and Baxter were at the bar. His eyes were drilling holes into you, his glare darting between your face and the remains of the bouquet still in your grip. He caught you red-handed, literally, on account of the roses. It was unspeakably awkward, even though your brain was screaming, "It's not real." You couldn't help but be swept up in the overwhelming sense of unease filling the room. Slowly, the bartender marched over to the counter, his footsteps weightly and fully full of intent. He firmly set down the tray of drinks. Glasses rattled angrily, but not a drop was spilled. Then he cocked his hip and folded his muscular arm, striking a pose which felt almost threatening, as bristled with suspicion. Well, now, I see how it is. He flicked the finger up and down, sizing you up with. So this blueberry-headed chump is who I'm losing to, really? The rather silly epithet, it got a fair number of titters from the audience, but the bartender wasn't laughing. He made a bitter sound at the back of his throat and shook his head. He muttered angrily under his breath, "I should have known." Wait! A cry came from the other side of the room. The mutual friend's face, distraught, was bustling their way over, limbs flapping with panic. I can explain. It's all a misunderstanding. What I'm trying to say is, stumbling over his own words, the friend attempted to lay out the situation. The flowers were all part of a plan to get the singer to admit her own feelings. As the friend nervously rambled, you found yourself practically throwing the bouquet down the counter in front of you like it was hot potato, pulling your arms in a non-threatening gesture. At first, you weren't convinced it would work. The bartender's expression was thunderous as a summer rain cloud. His brows were set at 90-degree angles, stern and steel. But as some of the other patrons began to chime in with words of confirmation, his dark countenance began to clear. A number of emotions melted into each other on his face. Anger became confusion became understanding became acceptance. He let a long, tired sigh and unfolded his arms. Okay, I hear ya. You were only trying to help. I'm sorry. He directed his apology at you. I shouldn't have gotten angry. There's nothing wrong with your hair. Don't worry. I just saw you holding those flowers and lost my cool. He chuckled bleakly. That's on me. I'm the problem here. At this, he hung his head and slouched where he stood. I can't believe she'd run away like that, screaming as if she'd seen a ghost, like I were the worst thing in the world. Is it really that awful being around me? Am I really that bad? His voice was thick with emotion, pain behind every word. There was barely a dry eye in the whole building. A chorus of sympathy rose up from the people around you, sounds of comfort and encouragement in equal measure. The tender walked behind his bar and came to rest his palms flat on the counter, his thick arms spread wide. I wish I knew what to do, you know? If only there were something, anything. It was a frank admission, laden heavy with resignation. He bowed his head again and was silent. There was a pointed pause into it. You heard Baxter gently clear his throat.
Honestly,
if you'll permit me say, it can be hard to know what to do in these kinds of situations, but importantly, the thing is that it's making you unhappy. Once you realize that, it should at least be obvious what not to continue doing. Dancing around your feelings like this will only lead to further and further from what you want, so why stick to the same old tune? The bartender gradually lifted his face to peer up at Baxter with an inscrutable expression. If you like the charming singer, then what could you ever have to gain by insisting otherwise? You don't need to propose or anything equally drastic, but why push her away when all you want is to get closer? His voice gained a faint littling cadence, almost like he was a singer too, before it tapered away to nothing. On the countertop, you saw the bartender clench a fist. Ah, you got me pegged. You and everyone else in this joint. So I like her already. What's good is that? She thinks I'm a joke. She wouldn't be seen dead with someone like me. We all know that too. You saw what just happened. I'm supposed to make myself look like an idiot, waltz on over and tell her we should be pals? I'd be straight up begging to be laughed at. I couldn't take it, not from her. Friend's right, you know, you're only making it worse. But what you're doing, you're already embarrassing yourself. It's always hard to put yourself out there. Isn't it better than the alternative? He stayed silent, but smiled at him compassionately. You know what? We're going for it. One hand came up to scratch the nape of his neck, a universal gesture of awkwardness. I guess you got a point there.
I get it.
I understand the concern. You needn't go any further than you're able. The key is that you step forward in the first place, or at least resist the urge to continue moving backwards. When the time comes, don't pull away. You'll only regret it later. The Bartender rested one arm across the counter, easing into a stance that was more casual. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. His body language was loosening up. You gathered that he was mulling over what had been said, taking it all in. For a short while, he cracked a cautious grin. You know, it's usually other people who want me to listen to their problems, and by listening, I mean I just help them pick a poison, you know? Blunt edges when nothing else can. Never thought I'd be the one on the receiving end, though. He wrapped a knuckle on the countertop and straightened up suddenly. Ah, shoot, I forgot the ice with your drinks. I'm being real sloppy tonight, letting personal stuff get in the way of business. Sorry about that. He began to walk towards the heavy curtain, his black shoes echoing loudly on the floor. Let me go take care of that and maybe cool myself off for a sec while I'm at it. With a click of his heels and a swish of the curtain, he was gone. And now what became of the unspoken consensus of the audience? An answer came shortly. Psst. It was in the form of a loud hiss from the other side of the room, from behind the corner where the singer had vanished. Her focus swung back to see the lady in question poking her head out. Shy as a dormouse, she cupped her fingers around her mouth, keeping it to a stage whisper. Is he gone? Various assenting voices chimed in. Dexter flashed her a quick thumbs up. Seeing that the coast was clear, the singers had vanished for a brief instant before reappearing, the rest of her following along with it. She swanned her way to the main area, oozing vain confidence. All of the terror of her departure had gone hastily passed over as though nothing had happened. She brought up a hand to shade her eyes, casting a look around the room, her immaculately lipstick lips parted. Has my dear, delightfully meddlesome friend decided to finally beat it too? Not yet. The friend's voice called out from somewhere behind you. While everybody's attention had been elsewhere, they had managed to collect the discarded bouquet. In their other hand was the lone flower the singer herself had pitched. They held it out to her. I'm sorry about the flowers. I lied. They weren't from him. They never were to begin with. The singer clapped over her mouth in shock. What? You tricked me! Her cry projected clear as a bell, ringing with hurt and betrayal. Her pristine face was crumpled in furious scowl directed at the friend and then everyone else in the room. And you were all in on it? The friend darted to her side in an effort to placate babbling apologies over and over with a mollifying tone. I know, I'm a terrible friend and I shouldn't have done it. Finally something we can agree on. Fine, I deserve it, but just hear me out, okay? Even though they weren't from him, there's nothing stopping you from flipping this on its head. I'm not sure I like where this is going. I'm a singer, not an acrobat. It's easy. When he comes back, why don't you give him the flower? Why don't you give the flowers to him? The singer stared blankly for a few seconds, then tossed her head back and bellowed with laughter. Her once lyrical voice was now cold and callous in timber. Oh, my darling friend, you should really consider joining the circus. I've never heard something so ludicrous. This is serious. I just know it'll work. Believe me. I'll be rooting for you, and not only me, you all think so too, right, gang? With the prompting, the room was filled with a short of shouts of agreement. Yeah. We'll all be right behind you. It's okay, don't be afraid. What have you got to lose? The comments came bright and fast. More people pitched in with remarks about what happened while the singer was gone. Others simply nodded along. Though she readily dismissed her friend's suggestion, the audience action seemed to be more convincing. She stood in the middle of the flurry of sound, head cocked, listening intently. At that very moment, there was a shuffling from behind the curtain entrance. The fabric parted to reveal the bartender carrying a palm-sized metal bowl piled high with ice. For the second time this evening, everyone froze in place. The singer slowly rotated on her heels to face him. Her eyes were wide with surprise. Suddenly, she stumbled forward, the mutual friend having given her a nudge, knocking her off balance towards the bartender. She wheeled around and glared at him before snatching a single flower. Her friend still held about, facing once more. He laughed a thin, nervous laugh and took one small step closer. A wide expanse separated them. Her footfalls echoed. One step, two step, then she halted, too afraid to continue. She wavered on the brink of turning back. All at once, the crowd made good on their promise. Hollers of encouragement came from the booth behind her. Whoops and cheers and whistles. Don't give up now. Woo! You can do it. Come on, girl. I believe in you. You applauded with the crowd. You stay quiet in your seat. Come on, girl. I believe in you. Once again, the singer crept across the room as though expecting to be attacked at any moment. The bartender was a statue, watching motionless, inch by inch, the distance close. When only a few feet remained to separate them, the singer paused. She cast an anxious look from her target to where you and Baxter were sitting. At your side, Baxter smiled and inclined his head in a nod. He followed suit, giving her 2 thumbs up, a big grin. What are you waiting for? With the poise and slowness of a puppet yanked on strings, she extended her arm. The flower gleamed in the dim light of the bar, a flush of red hanging in the air between them. The bloom was fragile, frail, and vulnerable, like a naked, helpless heart offered up in prayer. Everyone in the room held their breath. The two held each other's gaze, neither speaking a word. He knew and she knew. This time it was real. The bartender silently placed the bowl of ice down on the bar, moment of choice across roads. Then he walked over, stretched out his fingers, pressed the petals of the single rose light as a feather, and then he placed his fingers over hers and gently lifted the flower free. It had accepted. The response was immediate. The space exploded with applause, cries of delight coming from all the sundry. The friends jumped up and down on the spot, suppressing a squeal. High fives were exchanged. There were wolf whistles and roars of approval. Baxter and you shared a look of silent satisfaction. Amid the jubilation, the bartender returned to the counter to retrieve the bowl of ice. Maybe it was a metaphor, the winter cold swap for the first bloom of spring. He hastened over to you and dropped a handful of cold, possibly metaphors, in yours and Baxter's glasses. He parted again with a wink. After that first romantic moment, the remainder of the story barreled ahead. No sooner had the lovers begun to open up to one another than further complication reared their heads. First came the parents, who had always claimed the two were fated. They were keen to seal the match to win the satisfaction of lording it over everybody. Nobody could bear the thought of granting them satisfaction, so began the elaborate schemes to keep the two families out of the loop. Tragedy devolved into farce. Every step, the audience had a part to play. One scene saw a group of patrons acting as a diversion, keeping one of the parents occupied while the lovers made their escape. And another, you and Baxter were recruited to slide secret notes along the bar while nobody was looking. Then the band got to help swapping the song in the program for another without warning. The singer defiant aria transmuted into one passionate, heartfelt long. It was a flurry of characters coming and going with chaotic energy you normally could only see at distance on a stage. And all throughout the carefully coordinated mayhem, the actual waiter diligently continued to cater to the patrons, serving more drinks, clearing tables, and lighting candles. He ducked and weaved between chairs and bar stools, and the other characters sometimes even participating in action, but normally fading into the background. At one point, the singer and he almost collided and would have sent a particularly hefty tray flying. But it was all part of the performance, and they both perplexedly caught the glasses before they fell. Too loud, approbation from the audience. That was a hard word. The journey was precarious, full of twists and turns, but with everyone's help, the protagonists were finally able to face their feelings for each other. Hardly anyone could have resisted getting caught up in it. When the confession came at last, a deafening cheer went up. The two shared a kiss, and the room was plunged into darkness. The band struck up a lively tune, and when the lights came back on, all the actors took their bows to well-earned applause that seemed to last for hours. Finally, the floor cleared, lamps dimmed in their usual twilight. It was finished. Love had triumphed, at least for one night. With the show over, things wound down for the evening. There were no more performances booked, though it was still a good while until closing. People enjoyed the room as a normal bar. The band continued to play, and patrons milled about with their drinks. Some people were admittedly discussing the performance you'd seen. The atmosphere was convivial. Axel added a contented sigh and fiddled absent-mindedly with his second baby Bellini. He barely touched it since it arrived. Seeing that you were aimlessly looking around, he caught your eye with a tilt of his head and quirked his brow.
What do you think?
Now then, As a show to your liking, I'm all ears, and you can be honest, it can be a lot to take in. At least I had the experience. Are you kidding? It was so fun. It was pretty interesting. It was really wonderful. I guess I've seen worse shows before. We were lost. It was hard to even process such a big event. It was so fun. I'm glad to hear that they put a lot of effort into their craft. The dedication to entertainment is commendable. You might be interested to know the shows aren't always like this. They have quite a wild selection of different genres. The murder mysteries are always popular, but I wasn't sure how you'd feel about interactive performance with the capacity for violence. Those can get rather intense, to say the least. Even the play we just saw is rarely performed the same way twice. As far as I've heard, they've often chopped and changed the premise, shuffling the characters and even events around as needed. You recall the ever-suffering friend desperate to help that fated couple find love? Well, some nights it is they who charmed the hearts of the singer or the bartender. In the situation, the third party is instead refusing their help out of kindness, not wanting to get in the way of their own possible romance. Sometimes the characters' families detest one another, Romeo and Juliet style. On those nights, the singer and the bartender dislike each other too, but pretend to fall in love in order to spite their own parents, and then, of course, it happens for real. And on the rare occasion, they simply play hard to get, faking a quarrel for no reason other than to frustrate their would-be matchmakers and laugh at them with guests in private. So you see, there are enormous potentials for telling a whole host of different stories, but usually the core idea is the same. The two characters, for whatever reason, are always talking past each other, always failing to communicate. It is up to the audience to lend a hand. I think it's a fascinating concept personally, a very novel form of entertainment. You listened attentively to Baxter's explanation, and regardless of what you thought of the performance, it was nice to hear him passionate about something. He spun from side to side on his bar stool, a dry smirk on his face. I suppose I find it fundamental concept rather amusing too. It's so obvious from the outside, the way the characters let their pride become an obstacle in their own happiness. As I said before, they want each other so desperately. What point is there in saying the opposite? It's plainly not right to yourself and the others you care for, and so unpalatable that it compels us in the supporting cast to action. Just right for interactive theater, I suppose. Yeah, being honest with yourself is a choice. And so is being dishonest. People's feelings aren't always as easy as that, though. Everyone has their own struggles. Are you saying you've never pretended to be something you're not? Of course, Baxter. Ward couldn't understand the concept of being shy. You declined to comment. People's feelings aren't always as easy as that, though, I suppose. And what might be easy for one person may not be the same for another. Emotions are more nuanced and can't truly be replicated in other forms exactly. It's all relative. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the videos I'm making. Remember to subscribe. That way YouTube brings you back here to see what's next. I won't take up any more of your time. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.